Good morning. Welcome to this KS3 Thought for the day. It's Friday the 22nd of May, it's almost half term, and it's time to turn off your computer screens, get out in the fresh air, or at least do something a little bit different and challenge yourselves. And so my thought for the day comes with a bit of a challenge attached. And so today's thought for the day is how to use this to make a sourdough loaf. To get our sourdough starter, what you need is some bread flour and some warm water. About 100 grams of flour, 100 millilitres of water, put it in a jar, just rest the lid on top, stir it up, leave it for 24 hours. After 24 hours you have to take out half of that starter, discard it, throw it away, it's not going to be up to much. Put in another 100 grams of flour, another 100 millilitres of water, stir it around, lid on, leave it another 24 hours. Repeat that for 5 days, and after that you've then got the basis of a sourdough starter. It won't taste quite as good as those that have been going for a month or a year, but it's a great starting point. And the natural yeasts in bread flour will start to activate, and that's what means that you don't need to add any actual yeast to your bread. So, on to the next stage. We go to our sourdough starter. It's relatively important to get the right proportions. So my starter, I put in about 270 grams of this. So not a huge quantity, always useful to top it up once you're done so it starts to ferment again. It does take on quite a peculiar aroma, but you've got your sourdough starter. That's the first most important step to get us going. Next, you need to add some warm water to your sourdough starter, almost the same quantities, about 270, 280 grams of that, and it goes. I can tell the suspense is very exciting here. So that's our 270 grams, and we give that a little stir around. After this we add our flour. Now basically 500 grams. You can go a little bit smaller than that, but I've found that 500 grams builds a slightly better loaf. There we go, that's 500 grams, and then just to add a little bit of flavour, a handful of salt. And that's it, it then goes into the mixer, and the next really important step comes about. So we'll get over there to zoom in and see what happens. The purists like Mr. McLeod, Master Baker, they would do all this by hand, but as I have a meeting to go to, it goes in my stand mixer on the dough setting with its dough hook, and it's really important it has 15 minutes to get the gluten structures stretching properly, and you'll see the difference as we come back and look at this again. After 15 minutes you'll see that the dough is now ready to stop being kneaded, and it can just sit and rest. Okay, so that's our dough that's been mixing for 15 minutes. You'll see if we just scrape around the edge here, it's pretty stretchy. It's got what we'd call a good gluten structure, and it's now going to sit in this bowl for an hour before we do anything else to it. But we also just need to add a spray of water over the top to stop it drying out, and then we cover it up with a towel. Many people would flour their surface, but it's much easier, I think, if you just give it a little spray of water, scoop out your dough, sometimes useful to have a little plastic lifter, scraper, gets it off the surface, keeps it all together. once it feels like you've got enough of a stretch to it, it goes back in the bowl and another hour. So it's now had 3 hours sitting in the bowl, proving and starting its fermentation. You can see it's now got a decent rise to it. We're just going to spread it out over on a floured surface, give it one more fold, and then we leave it for another hour. And then after that, the bread goes in the proving basket. I think it's called a banatone. And then it will sit in that overnight until it comes out ready to be baked. So let's get this out. A little bit of flour on the top, just to help it avoid sticking to the work surface. Give it our scrape around. That's looking much better. Bit of flour on top to stop it sticking as we fold it over. I just like to make sure that there are no sticky edges, and then you'll start to see there are little pockets of air building up inside, and we don't really want those at this stage. So all I'm doing is just giving it one more fold over and making sure that when there's a wetter, stickier area, then I dust that over with a bit of flour to help stop it sticking to the work surface. So it's going to sit here for 1 more hour once it's had its fold, and then it goes in its basket. So it's had an hour. You can see how it's already expanded again, so we'll give it one more fold and then it goes in the proving basket. Very important to make sure that all areas on your dough are well dusted with flour so it doesn't stick in the basket, because there's nothing worse when it comes to putting it into the oven than it's sticking and collapsing as it comes out of your proving basket. So that looks to be pretty good. And it now goes in here overnight. So our dough has had a good few hours, preferably overnight, in the fridge, just rising a little bit. It's now time for it to go in the oven. The oven's been set at 245 degrees. It's almost as hot as you can get your oven to go to. We've got a pan of water in there because that helps develop a good crust on the loaf. And we're just going to tip this onto actually my pizza peel because it helps it slide into the oven a little bit easier. Now, with a bit of luck, that's come out quite nicely. I am actually just going to dust off some of that excess flour because the flour tends to burn a little bit, so we'll come back when I've done that. And the final step is just to slice the bread, which gives it a little bit of room. As it goes into the initial burst of heat, it will expand, and hopefully that will give us a better shape to the loaf. So any really sharp knife, this is a specific bread blade, we're just slicing across it like this, once down the middle, and into the oven it goes. So in the oven, 245 degrees, 15 minutes at that temperature, then we'll turn it down to 205, and then it should be ready about another 15 minutes later, so just over half an hour cooking time. So it's had half an hour in the oven, it's time to get the loaf out and see how it looks. There we have our sourdough loaf. Maybe not the most risen I've ever made, but if I'm absolutely honest, we didn't actually leave it in the fridge overnight. We had to race it through. A bit of a challenge. Maybe you'll have a go at it over half term. Maybe you'll send me a photo of your baking exploits, and hopefully they'll turn out even better than this one. In the meantime, I hope you have a really good break over half term. Turn off your screens, get away from your computers, get out in the fresh sunshine, and I hope you come back fully refreshed after a really good half-term break. Is it still running?
I've started again.
You're going to make me laugh.
It's disgusting. Just throw it in the bin. Throw it over the fence. I'm just going to give it to the birds.
That's concentrate.
Just throw it at Lola. Sorry.
I've got to get it finished.
Okay.